Hello fellow YouTube friends, followers, fools and flabbergastas, my name is Mason and it's time for another easy PvE build guide. With this video I want to give you an update on the condition Renegade Elite specialization for the Genthier Wilds expansion. And as you can probably guess, we're going to make use of the new spear weapon for overland that was introduced with the expansion.
Okay, let's go!
For the first couple of weeks of Genthier Wilds, the spear on Revenant was really overpowered for condition builds. They nerfed it a little, but it still overshadows all other condition based weapons, so we're going to use it. Just like before, I'm going to make a small adjustment to the standard rotation by using the trait Song of the Mists instead of Charge Mists. That makes the rotation easier since you don't need to pay attention to your energy levels when swapping legends. This comes at a small damage loss, but it's still more than good enough. Now when it comes to Spear is a really cool and strong weapon for condition damage build, and it excels at encounters with longer phase timings since it has a fairly long damage ramp up. The main concept of the Spear weapon evolves around reducing the cooldown of the most important damage skill, Abyssal Raise. All other spear skills, including auto attacks, do that. Now, Abyssal Raise, or skill 5, applies conditions and gives you stacks of Crushing Abyss on top. That effect will trigger on swapping weapons or legends, applying even more conditions. It is therefore essential that you swap legends on cooldown to trigger this as often as possible. And in between, you want to cast it as often as possible to generate the stacks. The auto attack is nice on Spear since it tracks whether your target is in melee range or not. If it is not in melee range, it will become a throw attack and a potential projectile finisher. Spear is a medium range weapon, which is why we'll put a shortbow on the secondary weapon bar for cases where you need longer range. And shortbow is very important because we're going to use it for one skill in the opener in the entire rotation. Speaking of rotation, let's dive into that. The rotation concept on Renegade involves swapping between legendary Demon stance and legendary Renegade stance on cooldown. When using a Renegade stance ability, the next Renegade stance ability within a 4-second window will be enhanced and have its cast time removed. That way you can use it during other skills. We're using this mechanic inside Renegade stance to enhance Razorclaw's Rage to apply additional torment with it. To enhance it, we're going to use Ice Razor's Ire as the second best condition skill. Note that Razorclaw's Rage makes this build scale with allies around you, since the bleeding applied by allies through this counts as your damage and uses your stats. This adds like 1.6k DPS over time and makes the ramp up on damage much faster. But to the rotation concept itself. Start on shortbow and legendary Renegade stance. The opener is very simple. We're using Ice Razor's Ire, as I said before, to gain the enhanced buff for the next stance ability. Then use Razorclaw's Rage right after. And then you have two options depending on whether you want to use a shortbow or not. With the shortbow you can use 7 shots or shortbow 3 to use the remaining energy. Option B without shortbow is to use Abyssal Raise, so Spear 5, and then always swap to legendary Demon stance. And here's where the general loop of the rotation starts. After swapping to the Demon stance, you always want to activate Embrace the Darkness, so the elite skill, and swap to Spear. Never leave Spear after the opener, it is unfortunately a DPS loss. The elite skill will slowly drain your energy, so you have a limited amount of skills you can use until you run out of it. For that reason, you want to use only the following skills: Abyssal Raise, so Spear 5 as often as possible, and Abyssal Force, so Spear 2 twice. You can cancel Embrace the Darkness a little early when you see that you might be able to cast Abyssal Raise another time, but it's not required. Once Renegade stance becomes available, swap to it. The first and last thing you want to do in Renegade stance is to activate Ice Razor's Ire. Then use Razorclaw's Rage within the 4-second window after Ice Razor's Ire. In addition, you want to use Abyssal Raise as often as possible, Spear 2 twice and Spear 4 once. Spear 4 is a pull skill that applies Defiance bar damage, so you might want to save that for times when you need it. Finally, you should have the energy to use Ice Razor's Ire again. Use it, then swap to the Demon stance and repeat from there. Alright, next up, CC skills. You have quite a few CC skills in the kit. The most important one is Dark Razor's Daring. This annihilates Defiance bars with 600 damage, so use it as often as you can when they're up. After that you have Shortbow 5, Spear 4, and Call to Anguish and Demon stance, but that should only be used as a last resort given how expensive it is. Now you should have a basic idea of how this build works in instance content. Let's talk about open world. For open world gameplay, it can make sense to make a build more forgiving so that you can sustain on your own. The first major step in terms of gameplay to increase survivability is to stay on shortbow or spear for ranged gameplay. Whenever you're in doubt, that strategy allows you to deal great damage from range, so you can kite dangerous enemies instead of face tanking their damage. Second, I recommend using the trait Vindication in Renegade instead of Lasting Legacy for a conversion of outgoing damage to healing. This is a significant boost to survivability. I'd recommend you to change 4 more traits from the standard DPS build. Make use of Fiendish Tenacity, All for One, Cleansing Channel and Rapid Flow. I'll explain all of them in a second. Fiendish Tenacity grants you a nice steady heal over time while you have resistance on you. If you swap legends on cooldown, you will maintain a good uptime on it. Resistance is a very strong boon, allowing you to fully ignore blinded, chilled, weakness, slow, fear, taunt, vulnerability, crippled and immobile on you. To increase the uptime on resistance, you can also enhance Dark Razor's Daring by using Ice Razor's Ire right before it when swapping to Renegade stance. As I said before, Dark Razor's Daring annihilates Defiance bars, which is very important in open world, so use it as often as you can when they're up. If you really want to bunker down without spending any money, you can make use of Salvation and Demonic Resistance in Corruption. This gives you a permanent inflow of Barrier, minus 15% damage taken from Unyielding Devotion, and both healing and a condition cleanse on dodging via Eluding Nullification. This can be used to solo basically anything in the game with ease, but it comes at the cost of a larger chunk of your damage as it costs uptime on Fury and other damage sources from Invocation. When it comes to gear alternatives for the standard Viper setup, you can replace it with Ritualist, Trailblazer or Celestial. For an all-rounder build for all kinds of PvE content, including instance content, I do recommend using Ritualists. It's what I use in open world, but if you want a more relaxed experience, you can also go for Celestial. There's a very cheap Celestial shortbow, and Ritualist's armor and trinkets are fairly cheap to buy on the trading post. Ritualist does have the advantage that it also allows you to play Alacrity Renegade in group content. Speaking of Alacrity, let's talk about boon coverage. Regardless of the trade choices you make, you will always have the possibility to maintain a little bit of Alacrity on yourself and allies via orders from above. Now, fully covering Alacrity requires a full set of Ritualist or Celestial gear and using this on cooldown. Now let's go through the boons one by one. Might is covered by the traits Incensed Response and Heroic Command. Endless Enmity and Invoker's Rage will maintain Fury easily as long as you keep swapping legends. The trait All for One applies protection every time you use a Renegade ability. This covers a good uptime, drastically increasing survivability. You can actually use the Elite skill for 5 energy and immediately cancel it to apply protection to yourself for a low energy cost. If you want a bit of faster movement in combat via swiftness, you can use Rapid Flow. This also increases healing a little bit, which is nice to have. I explained before that Fiendish Tenacity paired with Dark Razor's Daring allows you to maintain a very good uptime on resistance on yourself. In the way it is designed for open world, this build does not maintain quickness and alacrity on itself with a full uptime. If you want to make that easy, you can use Jade protocols. These will give you almost all boons in the game for 10 seconds whenever you enter combat, with a 30-second cooldown, drastically increasing uptime on many of them. And for easy quickness coverage, you can abuse the synergy between the Relic of the Cavalier and Blast from the Sky Scale to apply lots of Aegis, Resistance, Might and Quickness to yourself. It has an internal cooldown of 1 second, but it applies the boons on every hit of Blast. Last but not least, let's talk about dealing with incoming conditions and control effects. Technically, this build only has one condition cleanse every 10 seconds via Cleansing Channel. In case you need more frequent condi cleansers, putting a Superior Sigil of Generosity or Purity on the second cheap shortbow is worth looking at. Either of the sigils cleanses conditions in frequent intervals, and you can just swap to shortbow whenever you encounter condition heavy fights. When it comes to sources for stun breaks and stability, you have Dark Razor's Daring and Pain Absorption. Dark Razor's Daring is a very strong CC tool, so we're primarily using this in the offense. But if you feel insecure about a particular encounter, you can save this for the stun break. The other stun break, Pain Absorption in Demon Stance, is very expensive, so this should only be used as a last resort when you can afford it. The great thing about using Invocation is though that your stun breaks are much cheaper than usual. You gain 15 energy back whenever you break a stun, making both of these skills much more affordable. Alright, that's it for this video. Feel free to like and subscribe for the YouTube algorithm. I hope this video was insightful for you and made you want to try Condition Renegade. See you next time and happy waking the demon!